is your settlement? What should I choose? To kick your ass? View my kills, top the front row, crush the infantries. We would be honored if you would join us.
With a definitive slice, Maul stared at the floor as he heard Obi-Wan's decapitated head fall and roll to his feet. His eyes glowing orange, fueled with victorious hatred. He could feel the dark side flow through him as he stood in the generator complex of the Royal Palace's hangar. No noise but the sadistic hum of his lightsaber. He sheathed his Jedi-killing weapon onto his belt. As he began to walk away, he heard the whimpering of Qui-Gon Jinn, who was still alive, snarking into the distance. He quickly turned, raising both hands as if he were a conductor in a John Williams orchestra. The two dead Jedi lifted in the air like limp noodles. He motioned his hands over the pit of the generator shaft and let go of the Force, peering over the edge as he watched them float down the tunnel into the unknown. Having discarded them like the trash they were, he grabbed his telecom from his pocket, communicating with his master, Darth Sidious.
It has been done, my lord.
Sidious appeared as a hologram in Maul's palm.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Maul did a slight bow to his master as communication was cut. Staring at the ceiling, closing his eyes, he knew where Anakin was. Up in space. Grabbing his cloak from the main hangar where his fight with the two Jedi had ensued, he climbed aboard a larger ship of the rebels so as to blend in with the others above, flying to where he could feel Anakin would be. Upon Anakin's successful victory, Maul flew next to him and the other fighters. As he got Anakin's attention through the intercom system, motioning to follow him, he told him Padme and the others were waiting just for him at a private location that was kept secret for her safety. Hiding his face beneath the cloaked cockpit of the carrier, Anakin, flooded with happiness, followed Maul, falling for his trap. Maul told him to leave quickly, boarding his ship as he knew the coordinates of the others and didn't want to create a lead for the Empire who may be watching. Anakin blindly accepted and flew his fighter into the large rebel ship. As it swallowed Anakin, he could feel something was wrong. Why didn't anyone tell me this before? Qui-Gon told me to stay put on Naboo. Maybe he changed his mind, Anakin thought to himself. Once the doors to outer space shut behind him, Anakin got out of the cockpit and went up the stairs to the central navigation point through the glass windows. He saw a large chair at the center of the room overlooking the front of the ship and the galaxy. However, no one was in it. As he could feel the darkness in the room, he quickly turned to leave and get back into his ship when he walked straight into Maul, who had slithered behind him as he entered. Who are you? Where's Padme? Where's Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan? Are they here?
You don't need it. As for your Jedi friends, you can find them disembodied down the reactor's core. I have sensed your power. You are the one they speak of.
Anakin began to cry. He looked to the floor, thinking of an escape plan from the Red Devil. Yet he found his voice to be so confident and powerful, even amidst the horrors they polluted. Something he secretly desired to emulate.
You wish to become a Jedi, don't you? I can feel your emotions, young one.
As Maul crouched to meet Anakin face to face, the only thing to change Anakin's mind was the promise to give him a better life than a slave, and to ultimately unlock his powers which he knew he had his whole life.
You wish to save your mother. I know you don't want her to be a slave to the wretched, disgusting creature they call Watto. I can save her. I can kill him and make him suffer. I will release her to you where she will have food, shelter, and everything she needs. I can make you more powerful than any Jedi, than anyone in the galaxy. If what they say about you is true, under my training you will rise as my apprentice and be the most gifted Force user of them all. We shall overthrow the Emperor and the Jedi. We will have our revenge, and then, only then, you will take Padme the way you would take anything else you want. Now, if what I've said does not entice you, then you shall betray me. I will hunt your mother down, kill her and Padme, bringing you their heads for you to stare at every night in your sleep while I make you my slave. I will make your previous life look like a warm dream compared to what I can do to you.
Anakin was backed into a corner. He had no other choice. If what he said was true, and Qui-Gon was really dead, along with Obi-Wan, Anakin's primary goal was to become the most powerful he could be, so that no one would take advantage of him, able to save his mother, protect Padme, and bring peace to this world. Maul's eyes glowed orange through his hooded cloak. He peered into Anakin's blue eyes, his patience growing thin for an answer. He ignited his lightsaber, illuminating the room with a blood-red glow, bringing it to within an inch of Anakin's cheek. Not moving a muscle other than his wide eyes, Anakin stared at the saber with utter fear yet immense curiosity. The color ounce of notorious loyalty once. Anakin looked up at Maul, waging his options. He knew he wanted power. He knew he wanted to save his mother. If what he said was true, then he was more powerful than Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, especially if they fought him as a team and he still won. Perhaps he could use Maul, and when he learned everything he could kill him and find Padme, freeing his mother from any control. He outstretched his small hand, wrapped the hilt of the lightsaber as it hung with each inch of movement. He switched it off and bowed, pledging himself to the training of Darth Maul, his new master. Over the next 13 years, training heavily under Maul, utilizing his powers, mastering the acrobatics, learning the 7th of 7 lightsaber styles like Maul had. This style in particular was the most difficult, which harnessed the user's ability for proficient strength, speed, acrobatics, and athleticism. His body began to change, developing unbelievable muscle bellies and definition just like Maul had. Upon each large test, Anakin was tattooed by his master, just like Maul had done once to himself, and with the command of Lord Sidious. The Empire was completely unaware of Anakin's existence, believing him to have been killed by Maul on the Battle of Naboo with the other Jedi. Sidious was saddened by this, as he knew he was the prophecy reborn. However, he believed so greatly in Maul's abilities that he was able to look past it. Upon Maul's private time from the Emperor's dealings, he would travel to the home world of the ancient Sith Academy on Korriban, studying every single scripture and holocron passed down from the legendary Sith, such as Bane, Revan, Ragnos, and anyone else he could soak information from. Remember, Maul was as athletic as he was intelligent. He always understood the value of books, and to get ahead meant learning from those who had taken their experiences by writing them in the temple. He taught Anakin Force Lightning, although not his favorite attack, as he believed in fighting your opponent like a barbarian would, up close and personal. He poured every ounce of knowledge in the galaxy that he could gather and get his hands on into Anakin. The Anakin we saw at the end of Revenge of the Sith, under Obi-Wan's training, was nothing compared to the Anakin who was completely unbought with no attachments to slow him down or waver his emotions under Maul's tutelage. His face covered in the Sith tattoos, he neither identified himself as a Sith nor as a Jedi, bearing a black lightsaber, free of all rules. He was simply a powerful user of the Force, blending with and bound by no code. His training was complete. Plotting to finally kill the Emperor, Maul led Anakin to Geonosis, where they would meet Sidious and Dooku. But known to them that Anakin was even alive. The time had come. They were ready. The night before the ship's arrival to their destination, Anakin closed his eyes to sleep, but he kept hearing whispers of a familiar voice. He couldn't make out who or what it was, only that it was calling to him. He got up out of his bed and walked to the other room of the ship, alone. He looked outside to the galaxy. Everything was quiet. Not a single noise other than the hum of the spaceship. An ominous blue orb appeared to his left, where he saw the outline of Qui-Gon Jinn appear. With shock, he stood still, not knowing what to do or think. Should he call his master? Should he strike down the premonition? Perhaps it was all in his head. He had been training awfully hard. Anakin, said Qui-Gon, you have changed. The events on Naboo have all...
It's definitely an eye-opener.
Mind-changing.
Has changed my mind.
No, like that's a human being.
Now seeing that, I do have a different, opinion.
I had no idea this is how Goshen takes place.
See what changed their minds at 2363.org.
Really changed the fate of the galaxy, and I am to blame for this. If I had perfected my skill and beaten Maul, he would have turned to the light side under my training and brought balance to the Force. Anakin's eyes began to swell with tears. The sight of his long-lost friend and potential master made him reminisce of who he once was and the path he was promised to follow. Anakin replied with a harsh voice that he had brought peace to the galaxy. He was bound by no code of the Jedi or the Sith, and he could do what he wanted. Qui-Gon assured Anakin that his freedom was not as well perceived as he had thought it was, telling him to look at himself, becoming the very image Maul had plotted for him to become. Anakin fell short of words. Hearing footsteps entering the room, Qui-Gon vanished. Anakin looked to see Maul very dissatisfied and asking who he was speaking to.
Maul locked the door and imprisoned him to his quarters until their arrival on Geonosis. Anakin sat in the dark, observing the last 13 years and what he turned into. Meditating on his thoughts, Anakin believed that there was a way out of this. He did not know what to do or who to call, as the only person he had over the last 13 years was Maul himself. Almost like a prisoner, he felt he couldn't do anything. He tried to channel the Force and talk to Qui-Gon, hearing him in his head, remembering Qui-Gon's face as if it were yesterday, as he kneeled closer to Anakin to tell him about midichlorians when he was checking his blood. It had seemed like a dream. So much had changed, so much had passed. He had been so caught up in the dream of saving his mother, becoming the most powerful user in the galaxy, and getting everything he ever wanted, so that no one again would ever bother him. He had turned into the very type of tyrant that controlled him and his kind years ago. Disgusted, he knew what to do. He had to bring balance to the Force, and the only way to do that was to kill Sidious, Maul, and Dooku. How could he do this? He knew he wasn't powerful to take all three on at once. He would have to do it alone. He looked back to his training the last 13 years and remembered all the stealth-like moves Maul taught him, to think, breathe, and act like a shadow itself. As he opened his eyes and Qui-Gon's voice vanished, he knew what he had to do. He grabbed his lightsaber, holstered it on his belt, looked to the air shaft above, and entered it, crawling through the ceilings, and finally looking down on Maul's room. This was the moment. This was what he was waiting for. He had to kill Maul, intercept Dooku and Sidious, and do what must be done. With a single flick of his lightsaber hilt, he ignited it, cutting through the shaft and falling to the floor of Maul's room. But he was nowhere to be found. The room was silent. All he could hear was his heart beating at a steady pace. In tune with his emotions, he moved his lightsaber around the room as it hummed in each direction, casting a dim hue into each corner of the room. Anakin searched his feelings for Maul, but felt absolutely nothing. The dark presence was nowhere to be found. Hearing the noise, he pushed open the door, entering the main console, looking out the window as he saw Maul's ship speed off into the abyss. He ran away, Anakin said. That wasn't like Maul to run, especially from his apprentice. He continued to stare at the ship as it was swallowed by the stars, sitting in his chair, thinking where Maul could have gone. He must have sensed Qui-Gon and was able to feel the shift in my emotions. Anakin leapt out of the chair. He's gone to meet Sidious and Dooku. Now that he knows I won't join him, he needed me. His whole plan all along was to train me as best as he could so that together, with my help, we could take down the Emperor and Tyrannus. He's afraid. Either that or very stupid to think he can take them all on by himself. He knows I will look for him like he did for me on Tatooine. Anakin paused, eyes fixed on where Maul's ship had drifted into space, his mouth wide open. Anakin moved to the center console, moving his fingers as fast as he could, opening the thrusters valves of the ship at full throttle, setting a course for Tatooine. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Blood." Knowing now that Maul was as evil as he was powerful, he would first make Anakin suffer for his betrayal by killing his mother and then taking his life after. He could not sit. He could not even breathe, thinking of what Maul could do to Shmi as he had promised when he had recruited Anakin first. He remembered there was one extra emergency escape pod on the lower deck. This pod would barely fit him, but it was very fast to escape danger in the case of an emergency. He quickly headed to the lower hangar, getting into the vessel and ejecting, setting a course for Tatooine. Anywhere on the planet would suffice at this point. As he looked behind him through the small window just large enough for his eyes to peek back at the ship, he could pinch it with 2 fingers. That was how fast he was moving through the desolate space.
I'm coming for you, Maul. Your time is at an end.
Not thinking of anything else, he meditated, knowing the fight ahead of him would be the most challenging and difficult he would face. He tried to see the positive in the situation, as it helped keep his fear at bay. He saw it as a warm-up for Sidious and Dooku after. He knew he was lying to himself. He was afraid. If there was one man who tormented, tortured, and scarred him as a child, it was Maul. This feeling stuck with him, no matter how old and powerful he became. After several hours, he could feel the planet near him. Opening his eyes, he saw the giant sand-colored sphere grow in size with each star he passed. It had been over a decade since he saw his mother. He didn't know where to look. Knowing he needed to find that wretched flying creature who enslaved them both, he would start there, as that would be the only place he could think of for who would know where his mother went. Softly landing on the planet as the massive double parachute of the pod opened like the wings of a butterfly, he sliced through the door, impatiently kicking it open. Squinting, not having seen his homeworld for too long, he did not miss it, nor the two merciless suns that would leave his skin raw when he was a boy, making the whip Watto used on him even more painfully searing. He knew where he was. By luck, the pod dropped him 20 miles from his hometown of Mos Espa. He would use the force to run at beyond human speeds, eyes blaring with fury and rage as his legs moved so fast it were as if he were floating on air. Seeing a Jawa in the distance with his trail of stolen goods, some of which were speeders to his support.
When you hear the word supplements, there's automatically some skepticism there. How do you know what's in them?
Try using the fine adjustment knob.
Are supplements regulated?
Regulated by the Food and Drug Administration.
How do you know what you're really getting? Is it all just a big scam? In the past, answers to those questions haven't been easy to find. But at Zao,
We totally get that. We ask those same questions too.
You want to make sure what you're putting in your body is real, safe, and effective.
you want something that will help you be great. So do we. So at Zao, we do things a little differently.
It's called science.
Starting with our lab. No, like a really, really big lab that we own. This is it.
And our own manufacturing facility.
Where we make pills, powders, liquids, you name it. Right here in the heart of Ogden, Utah. These are our scientists. Real scientists.
I am the lab director with a PhD in pharmaceutical chemistry.
Yeah, we're not messing around. Our team tests all incoming ingredients to make sure they meet our quality standards.
When it comes to quality, we'll send something back if it's not exactly what it should be.
Then they test our finished products to make sure the formulas are just right.
Right here, we test to make sure our product makes it through stomach acid and into your intestinal tract. We test to ensure there are no chemical residues from pesticides that have been banned since the 1970s.
These laws are designed to protect the public and the environment.
But why should you care about all of that? Well, we've tested the other guys' stuff too, and...
Oh yeah, a lot of other brands fail quality testing.
Like, a lot of brands.
The truth is, you're putting the stuff into your body, so we make sure we're creating the highest quality supplements possible so you can get your greatness on. That's why we follow good manufacturing practices.
In an FDA-registered facility.
And we put our resources into double testing the supplements we make. So, from now on, when you hear the word supplements, we hope you'll think of Zao, right here in the heart of Utah. And we hope you remember,
Quality. Quality.
quality starts with Zao.
Knowing he needed to save as much energy as he could, he traveled to the little annoying creature. Without wasting time on formalities, one stroke was all it took. The Jawa sizzled on the charred sand as it twitched in 5 pieces, becoming motionless. Anakin boarded the bike. Without hesitation, he pushed towards it, traveling faster than he ever could by foot, even with the force. He could see the mirage of the town near with every spark of angst he had. Getting off the bike as it continued to travel in a straight line, crashing into a fruit stand and causing a scene, Anakin ran to Watto's workshop. Surfacing horrid memories, he ignored them and asked the slave where Watto was. The small, malnourished boy, covered in grease, dirt, and bruises, pointed to the outdoor cantina several blocks north. Anakin looked ahead. He could make out the silhouette of a fat, floating, waspy, bug-eyed creature socializing with other aliens over a drink. His heart racing, he didn't grab for his lightsaber yet, for he wanted to deal with his former master with his bare hands and new abilities. Watto looked at Anakin with his mouth agape, his drink falling to the earth with a shatter as his friends, including Sebulba, wondered who approached. Eyes glowing orange, Anakin walked up to Watto and grabbed him by the throat, almost piercing through his helmet. Several of Watto's friends grabbed Anakin's shoulders until they began to combust from the inside out, screaming in agony, disintegrating into the ground until nothing was left but bones and flaming hair. People screamed with fear as they all ran in opposing directions from the scene. Watto's eyes bulging from their sockets, he tried to speak, saying his mother was on a moisture farm, not far from here. Anakin let go of his grasp.
How do you know I wanted to know about my mother? There was another just moments ago in my shop. He asked me to tell them, covered in a black cloak and hooded. I couldn't see his
Watto's wings laid on the floor along with his legs and hands. Nothing but an egg-whipped head as he oscillated on the ground, shrieking for help. Anakin kicked him in the mouth as blood began to spew from where his broken teeth were. He looked down at Watto and said,
Now you feel some of my pain.
Walking up to a nearby onlooker on their speeder, he pushed them off as he raised one leg to saddle the vehicle. He sped off for this moisture farm, only hoping Maul hadn't found it yet first. Traveling for what seemed like an hour, as the second sun began to slowly set, illuminating the darkness of the planet, he saw black smoke protrude from a home in the far distance. With a terrible feeling, he wished the speeder would go faster. Having topped it out the whole trip there, 3 bodies laid on the floor. They were unrecognizable, only that one was a man with no legs, and the other 2 were a young man and a woman. Their remains weren't even human-looking anymore. Faces completely disformed, limbs missing, gashes on the parts of their body that weren't burned alive. Even for Anakin, this was pure evil. His stomach sank at the sight. He didn't care for them, only in the hopes that his mother was not there. He walked into the home, which was still partially on fire, mostly reduced to charcoal by now. No sign of his mother could be found. The place was empty. Walking back to his speeder, he noticed a piece of paper laying in one of the burnt, severed hands. The arm was blackened and almost skeleton-like, however the paper was untouched, almost brand new, with the exception of char marks, of course. He pried open the crisping fingers as they fell apart. Opening the paper, it was a note from his mother. She was alive. She had managed to write him a message before Maul took her to Geonosis. It didn't look like her handwriting, but maybe she was in a rush as she was getting the paper before Maul took her. He only hoped.
He's baiting you, Anakin,
he said to himself as he stood up to get on his speeder and find the nearest ship. He knew Maul was waiting for him on Geonosis as planned, most likely with Dooku and the Emperor. This meant he had to take on all 3 of them. Nothing could get in his way now. He had to fulfill the prophecy. What about the other Jedi? Perhaps they could help. He had too much pride to ask for help. Besides, his powers were beyond that of anyone, so he thought. This was something he had to do alone. Anakin. Qui-Gon's voice appeared as Anakin sped through the cold desert night.
Anakin, go to Coruscant. Seek help from the other masters. If you go to Geonosis, I cannot help you.
Where were you all these years to help me anyways? Anakin said through his teeth as the wind hit him in the face, watering his eyes.
Where were you when I was a child? Alone, afraid, helpless, slave to that devil. Where were you when I needed you? Anakin, I couldn't interfere. I was unable to interfere. I'm the most powerful Jedi ever. I will bring peace to my new empire.
So enraged he felt like he was going to explode. Approaching a small village of sand people, he stopped his bike to slaughter every single one out of pure rage. Women, children, men, young, old, it didn't matter. Anakin harnessed every part of the Force, light, dark, and in between. He was truly free, unbound by any code. Once his spree had ended, which didn't take long at all, he got back on his speeder and covered his mouth with his robe, coughing as he inhaled all the floating pieces of char from the bodies he'd just mutilated. He was approaching Mos Espa again, but as he looked to his left, he saw a ship. It was medium-sized, but it bared the Imperial logo. Anakin quickly turned and stopped in front of the lower door, as at least 15 droids walked in, out, and around the ship loading cargo. He put his fingers to his lips and whistled as loud as he could, shouting how much he hated the Empire. The droids reacted fast, pointing their guns at him, all 15 standing in a semicircle around him. Anakin loved this feeling. He closed his eyes, ignited his lightsaber, and threw it like a boomerang, as it spun like a laser propeller, slicing everything in its path, returning to his grip before every droid fell to the floor.
Impressive, young boy. Surely you are strong in the Force, my young Jedi,
said a deep voice in the darkness of the ship.
I'm no Jedi. Show yourself,
said Anakin as he raised his lightsaber in defense. A red glow emanated from the darkness of the ship as a black cape flowed down the rim. Anakin knew this was Darth Tyrannus, the former and fallen Jedi, Count Dooku. Bearing a curved lightsaber, he approached Anakin.
What do you want?
Whenever I got anxious, I would hit my vape.
I thought vaping gave me peace of mind, but it really didn't.
It was a fake form of confidence. I was nervous all the time.
Vaping made my anxiety worse.
Boy, perhaps you should run off to your mother.
His face twisted as he said the next sentence.
Unless she's a little too tied up to help you,
said Dooku as he laughed at Anakin, showing him a hologram of his mother, unconscious and beaten badly.
Do you think Maul kept you a secret this whole time? The Empire knows everything. I was sent here upon Lord Sidious's request to bring her to Geonosis. However, this is a turn of events. You were much faster than we anticipated.
Anakin had heard enough. Their lightsabers creating a show of lights like fireworks. Dooku continued to taunt him.
Your skills are nothing. Perhaps you failed as a student, but then again, how good can you be with that pet of the Emperor, Darth Maul, as a supposed master? Do not worry, boy. I will take you to her. Maybe you'll be just in time to see her head fall before yours.
His lightsaber dropped. Anakin had harnessed Black Rage and sliced half of Dooku's face off at a vertical angle. As he dropped to the ground, Anakin cut the Sith's head and held it by the hair, staring at the noseless face, or whatever was left of it. He moved all the droids out of his way with a sway of his hand harnessing the Force. Boarding his new ship, he tossed Dooku's decapitated head onto the floor, bolstered his saber onto his belt, and set course for Geonosis. He was truly ice. He had no emotions left. He was a machine. Knowing what he had to do and how to do it, he sped off into space, leaving his home planet behind as he got smaller in the distance. There was just one thing left he had to do. Kill Darth Maul and the Emperor. Anakin sped through space as he sat back in the pilot's chair, cutting circles into Dooku's severed head with his lightsaber as it rolled on the ground. The smell of the cooking flesh began to annoy him, so he kicked it into the corner of the room and turned around to face the ship's destination. Course was set for Geonosis. Shouldn't be long now, he thought. All he could think about was the hologram Dooku showed him of his mother, and the note which said that they also had Padme. A small part of him was excited to see her, even though she was held captive. It had been over 13 years, after all. The last time he left Tatooine, he had told his mother he'd be leaving to become a Jedi, only hoping that she would understand his life and the choices he was forced to make through Maul. None of that mattered anymore. He knew his duty, and it was going to be the hardest thing he had ever faced. As he paced the ship, thinking of different scenarios that could unveil when he would fight Maul and Sidious, trying to anticipate their moves and come up with different strategies, he lingered on the fear of Maul unleashing his powers, and even if he did kill his master, he still had the Emperor to deal with. All of Anakin's life, he felt a large build-up within him. Even when he had not met Qui-Gon or the others, before his life was turned upside down, he knew there was a rage brewing within him that he had not tapped into, and was almost beckoning for him to let go and release it. No matter what happened to him, the torture Maul put him through, the pain of not seeing his mother, the fear of not being able to survive under the harsh conditions, he still could not break. He tried so many times, so many moments passed where he felt it slipping, felt himself finally letting go, no matter the anger or the loss he experienced. The only extent of his reactions would be tears or anger, but the bottled up feeling never went away. Like a big sneeze that would just constantly linger at the tip of your nose, taunting and teasing, but never happening. Anakin stood as the planet approached, its bright, rusty sand-like complexion glowing in front of his face like a growing orb. He set coordinates to land where him and Maul had originally planned to intercept Dooku and Palpatine. Throwing off the cloak he was wearing, he didn't need it, nor did he wish to stay hidden any longer. 13 years was long enough. Grabbing a small sack with a drawstring, he put Dooku's disfigured, severed head and sealed it in the bag. He couldn't wait to throw it to Maul's feet. He readied his lightsaber on his belt, stood and faced the front of the door of the ship as he landed, pressing the gate to open. His eyes still, face stern, and mind ready. The Force was with him now. There was no turning back. As the doors opened, his eyes were met with the piercing light of the planet's sun. As he landed on a roofless, suspended hangar on the side of a mountain, he put the bag on his back and walked down the ramp of his ship, entering the largest opening of a man-made cave he had ever seen. Looking around him, he saw no signs of anyone, his force powers extremely attuned to his surroundings. He made sure his footsteps made no noise. He could hear whimpering from around the corner. With every inclination of his soul, he wanted to see who was in pain, but he knew it would have been just a trap. Waiting behind the corner of the stone wall, he placed his hand by his lightsaber just in case anything were to happen. Maul and Sidious, after all, were the galaxy's most skilled at the ability of stealth and hiding their presence. This was his moment. From here on, everything would change into his favor, or the Sith's. The fate of the galaxy rested upon his shoulders, upon this very moment. He could feel the rage build up even more now, as if it hadn't marinated enough on the ship to the planet. Like carbonated water in a tin canister, he couldn't wait any longer. Swiveling around the corner, he ignited his lightsaber only to see nothing. No one. He was standing in some sort of gargantuan oval room. Perhaps 1,000 people could fit in here, he thought to himself. His lightsaber was the only thing making noise. Shading it back onto his belt, the place seemed familiar, as if he had been here in a past life. Looking around, guarded, seeing nothing or no one, except a small hexagonal round object with string laying several meters away from him at the other end of the room. He knew what that was. He ran to it, bending down as he covered his mouth with one hand and picked it up with the other. Dooku's head swiveling in the bag from Anakin's shoulders and back to the middle again as he stood upright. His eyes beginning to turn orange with hatred as they leaked tears streaming down the crevices of his face. It was the necklace he had given to Padme 13 years ago.
What's up, Sonny? Where is your Shelton?
And Obi-Wan. He remembered how she said she'd keep it forever. It looked burnt and charred. His mind raced as he could feel a darkness blanket the room like a sea of evil, drowning every ounce of air. "You," he said in a defiant voice as he turned to face his old master. Darth Maul stood at the end of the room with his hood shadowing his face. "Where are they?" Anakin yelled. "You're going to pay for what you've done." The rage was not slipping. It was the most uncomfortable feeling he had ever experienced, as if someone had to vomit but nothing would come up. He stared at Maul as the assassin's eyes glowed orange through his hood. "You betrayed me," said Maul. "And you ran," replied Anakin, "like a coward, because you know I'm more powerful than you, or your puppeteer Sid." From behind the shadows, a shadow darker than it had emerged, cloaked and hooded in black with pale hands outstretched through the sleeves of his robe. Blue veins like ice protruding from the Emperor's fine skin as the tail of his cloak floated effortlessly behind his every smooth step. Anakin could only see his lips. They were thin and cracked as they curled up in a sinister smirk. As he stood slightly behind Maul, he pointed to Anakin with his small, long, thin finger. "The prodigy has arrived."
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
Maul uncrossed his arms and slid his cloak down his broad shoulders and crumbled on the floor, pushing it away using his mind, tossing it to the side of the room. The hilt of his double-bladed lightsaber twirling in his hand as he grabbed it from the belt of his tunic. Anakin took the bag off his back, opened it, and grabbed Dooku's impaled, half-cut face by the hair, tossing it in the air and...
No, Connor, don't do it, Connor. Please don't, Connor. Connor, no! Oh, you then.
Slicing it immediately with his lightsaber, holding both halves of the head with the force, he threw it to Maul with vicious speed, who looked disgusted with a slight smirk on his face as if he had enjoyed it. The Emperor, shocked at the evident death of Dooku, who was supposed to have returned by now, stared at the face not with disgust but with a look of dissatisfaction, as if he were insulted that he even gave Dooku any training at all to be killed so easily. Anakin's voice echoed heavily through the chamber. "I'll do the same with your head, my master, and then yours, your highness." As he looked towards Sidious with a cold gaze, almost lifeless. "Come," said Palpatine, as he looked to the corner of the room, which led to another smaller pathway, as two droids came out holding a carbon box. Palpatine motioned
This goes right by me.
as the droids walked over to Skywalker with the package. Anakin, taking no chances, crushed them using the dark side, then threw them back at the Emperor, who literally disintegrated it without moving a muscle just inches before his face, as his eyes began to glow gold from deep within his hood. The box lay on the ground where Anakin had crushed the droid several feet in front of him. Pulling the box towards himself, he questioned the purpose of this act, as the Emperor's voice echoed throughout the room. "Open it. Inside are the tools to set you free. The tools to complete your training, to make you my apprentice." Maul quickly turned to face his master, confused and perplexed. Sidious continued, "It has landed all alone for you to be trained by my apprentice. Maybe you have kept the secrets of it. Throw me with him. But I had planned all alone to bring you here, to set you free, to test yourself, to see if you're worthy
attach yourself to my teachings. However, first, you will open the gift I have given you. Unlock your powers in the Skywalker.
Anakin, shocked at the level of planning. For over 13 years that the Emperor had schemed and manifested into reality. Everything he had planned to happen was happening before their eyes in real time. He was truly brilliantly evil. Anakin could feel the box calling to him. Could this finally be the tool he needed to make him the most powerful in the galaxy? Perhaps opening it would give him the power he needed to kill Sidious and Maul indefinitely. He had control over his powers. He wouldn't be turned to the Emperor's service. He walked over to the box, inching closer with every step. Anakin, no! Jedi Master Mace Windu and Master Yoda had appeared behind Sidious and Maul, both their lightsabers at the ready, illuminating their shadows with purple and green.
Open the box, you must not,
said Yoda in a very serious manner. This was the first time Anakin had seen Master Windu and Yoda since the Jedi Council had briefly tested Anakin's abilities with upon Qui-Gon's request. Qui-Gon communicated with Master Yoda from the other realm. He told us everything that had happened. We had to get here before the box was opened. Anakin didn't understand. What was the deal with this box? Was it some ultimate lightsaber that could cut through other laser swords? He didn't understand, but he knew he didn't respond well to orders by anyone. Listening to himself, he walked to the box, ignoring Windu's cries to stay away, while Sidious beckoned for Anakin to do it. To become the most powerful Force user in the galaxy, telling him if he didn't, he would regret it forever. Mace and Yoda rushed Sidious and Maul, all four entering in the most amazing fight in the galaxy. The red blades swirling all around purple and green as Yoda flipped, jumped, and bounced off walls matching Sidious's speeds, while Mace harnessed his ability to use the dark and light sides of the Force, keeping up with Maul's every move. They both had mastered the 7th Force in lightsaber combat. However, Mace's variant, called the Pod, used a slightly different style than Maul's, circling each other and switching opponents when the time was right. Yoda and Maul outdoing each backflip and acrobatic move with the next one as Mace and Sidious entwined in a dance of death. All that could be seen were colored orbs of light moving faster than any other creature could even keep track of. Anakin wanted nothing more than to kill them. But he wanted more power than anything else. He wanted it more than seeing his mother, or Padme for that matter. He wanted his destiny to become a reality, to turn himself into the most powerful entity in the galaxy. If that was what was in this box, and that could help him, even slightly, he would take no chances. Crouching in front of the package, holding Padme's necklace in his left hand, he used his right to slowly open the first lid of the box. The room went black. Time stood still, the necklace making a silent noise as it dropped from the trembling hand. This world was indescribable. Nothing was visible, only pure, bubbling black. Echoes of the fighters emanated in and out of this realm, lightsabers humming through parallels.
Note 2. Learn to let go. Don't look back before you go. Before you leave.
His eyes opened. They were not blue, orange, or red. They were black, as if his pupils had dilated beyond the eye's corners and into his brain. Anakin was no longer Anakin. He was something else. Something the universe itself couldn't explain. He was larger than life or death. He was both at the same time, finally free. What Plagueis and Palpatine had accidentally created him for from his birth had become real. His training was complete. Walking over to Maul as the Jedi Masters and Sith Lords continued to fight, completely beknown to them that Anakin had opened the box to find the contents within. Anakin pushed Yoda and Windu into the wall, melting the stone around their bodies so that they could not interfere with what was about to happen. Skywalker, don't give in to the hate, Mace yelled as he tried to break free from the wall that swallowed his limbs, forced to watch and incapable of doing anything while Yoda was in shock at what he was seeing. Maul and Sidious faced Anakin as he walked towards them, his lightsaber on the floor behind him with the box and Padme's necklace. Maul smirked and readied himself to fight as he noticed Sidious back away in fear, running for his ship, docked on the platform overlooking the second small hangar by the circular window, running with a look of shock on his face he had never seen before. Confused, Maul looked back to see Anakin an inch away from him, wondering how he moved so quickly across the room without him sensing it. Maul backed away, peering into Anakin's black, soulless eyes when he looked down to his stomach to see an entire arm through it. Feeling unbelievable pain as the hand retracted, he turned around, bleeding all over the floor to see Anakin standing behind him, dropping to his knees as he screamed into the ceiling, while the the Chosen One caused Maul's eyes to burst into flames so hot that the blood